I've got so many areas to pursue that I'll mostly propound questions for the record, so you'll have a few minutes of relaxation. The Korea Free Trade Agreement, what worries me is goods coming into this country duty-free, manufactured by North Korean or Chinese labor. For example, on automobiles, the automobile could be 65% made in China, then taken to South Korea, where it would be finished by Chinese guest workers residing in barracks in South Korea, and then this car could enter the United States duty-free, having never been touched by a South Korean worker. Of greater concern is outlined in my letter February 9th to the President, which I know your staff is already working on a response to, dealing with the special industrial zones in North Korea, in which North Korean slave labor is provided to South Korean companies. The South Korean ambassador to the United States is on record as saying that he believes that the Korea Free Trade Agreement will pave the way for goods entirely produced in these slave labor zones to enter the United States duty-free. And if you review my letter, you'll see that it looks South Korean ambassador has a very good legal point. All the more reason why we need to change this agreement before we submit it to Congress, particularly the annexes described in my letter. I applaud your efforts to liberalize our export controls without hurting our national security. The goal has got to be jobs. But sometimes liberalization leads to exporting the jobs. If something is taken off the munitions list, then it could be manufactured in China and imported into the United States. If you license the export of tools and dies and plans and technology, that can lead to goods being produced abroad. So I hope that prioritization and the liberalization is given to those projects that will provide more jobs rather than more offshoring to the American economy. As to Iran sanctions, the ranking member did an outstanding job in propounding the questions and pointing out how important this is. The State Department began a number of investigations, particularly of Chinese companies, back in September. Under the law, the State Department is supposed to complete that within 6 months. That means next month. And the question there for the record is whether the U.S. is actually prepared to sanction a firm located in a major trading partner of the United States, also known as China. And if we are not willing to sanction any company in China, if we're looking to delay decisions where 6 months ought to be long enough to make a decision, then we make a mockery not only of our policy toward Iran, but of the rule of law in the United States, since the law does require certain action. As to the Caucasus, the Defense Minister of Azerbaijan stated recently that his country is seriously preparing for war. I hope you could outline for the record the serious repercussions that Azerbaijan would face if it renewed the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict. As to an organization known as the MEK, the U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia has required the State Department to review its decision. A number of well-respected foreign policy experts have said the MEK ought to be taken off the list. This is the only thing that Howard Dean and John Bolton agree on, not to mention General James Jones, Bill Richardson, and Lee Hamilton recently. I asked for a classified briefing of the relevant subcommittee. The State Department refused because of the litigation. The Intelligence Committee provided it, and frankly, after that classified briefing, I thought that perhaps there was nothing done this century that justified the MEK being on that list, and it provided substantial ammunition to the belief that the MEK is on the list as part of a peace offering or a concession to Tehran. So I hope that you will personally review the decision that the Court has ordered your department to review. Finally, is the issue of Libya. It may, in the future, depending upon developments, be good policy for us to arm the Benghazi army if it ever organizes itself, if they have a functioning provisional government. And I wonder if you've begun a review of the recent UN sanctions and of U.S. law to make sure that America could legally do that should you decide it to be good policy. I don't think if God forbid there is a major conflict around Tripoli, let's make sure the right side wins. Yield back.
Thank you, Congressman.
Madam Secretary, without objections, members may have 5 calendar days to submit questions for the record for the Secretary, Mr. Sherman. So we hope to get some answers to those important questions. I'm pleased to recognize—
Madam Chairman, I'd ask unanimous consent that my letter of February 9th be made part of the record.
Absolutely, without objection.